Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Darrell Brooks saga. I'm Jester, and in today's episode, we're going to continue with day 6. We're going to continue watching Darrell interview more experts. Let's see how that goes. Before that, thank you so much for subscribing, everyone. I noticed that we passed through 600 subscribers, which is awesome. Like I said before, after this day, the schedule is gonna be different. I'm gonna try to not move it too much, but I'm gonna be working, so it's gonna be a little bit more difficult. So subscribe if you want to see and don't miss any episodes moving forward. Episodes every day. All right, let's get right into the video.
Did you perform an external examination of an individual identified as Lyanna Owen?
Yes.
Can you just state for the record how many pages that autopsy protocol consists of?
Do you have the autopsy protocol in your materials?
No.
These autopsy protocols.
He should have it. He just couldn't find it.
All right, we'll still make copies.
And I did provide Mr. Brooks a copy of both the autopsy protocol as well as the diagram that's going to show on the screen.
Objection, I don't consent to being called that name, Your Honor.
We
For the
start off
record.
with the name.
I would ask the court to accept Exhibit 62 and 163 into evidence.
Objection.
What was the cause of her death?
Multiple blunt force traumatic injuries.
Specifically for the injuries that she sustained, can you describe the fatal injuries for the jury?
Objection, leading witness.
How is that lady? She's
Overruled.
asking.
She may answer. Lyanna Owen had injuries to her head, spine, torso, and viscera, or her internal organs.
Does the documentation in Exhibit 164, is that a summary of your findings from the autopsy protocol?
did
for
all
Ms.
that.
Hansen?
Yes.
I would ask the court to admit Exhibits 164 and 63 and publish 164.
Objection.
Obviously,
what?
164 is on
To
the
the
screen.
evidence?
Has Exhibit 63, the copy, been provided to Mr. Brooks?
Correct. The autopsy protocol for Virginia Sorensen as well as the diagram contained in 164 have both been provided to Mr. Brooks.
Objection, I don't consent to that name, nor do I agree to it.
Did you perform an external and an internal examination of Ms. Sorensen?
Objection, leading the witness.
It's a question.
Yes.
And can you describe for the jury which injuries were fatal injuries?
Virginia
Objection, leading the
Sorensen.
witness.
It's not
Overruled.
bleeding.
Virginia Sorensen also had a high cervical spine injury with laceration of her brainstem. She also had lacerations to her heart, either of which would have been fatal.
And is that consistent with being struck by a moving SUV weighing approximately 3,300 pounds?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
She's an expert.
Yes.
How is
Finally, Dr. Shield, did you perform an autopsy on Jackson Sparks?
Yes.
And I'm going to display what's been marked as State's Exhibit 165 on the screen in front of you. And for the record, the state did provide Mr. Brooks with a autopsy protocol for Jackson Sparks as well as a copy of Exhibit 165, which is the
Yeah, it's really important for them to give him all the paperwork because he can say, "Oh no, I don't have it," so that doesn't matter. So they're actually, even if he has it, they're giving to him again.
diagram. Ma'am,
Objection, I do not consent to that name, nor do I know that individual. For the record.
And you
Please
still
continue.
thank you.
respond to
Ma'am,
that
does
name.
Exhibit 165, the diagram in front of you, accurately show the findings that you made during the autopsy of Jackson Sparks?
Yes.
Okay. I would ask the court to admit State's Exhibit 64 as well as State's Exhibit 165 into
Objection.
evidence and publish Exhibit 165.
Objection.
What?
Overruled.
Is there any reason why it would take till the 27th to perform the autopsy?
Objection.
He was Hold in. on. Oh, sorry. Overruled. You may answer. Jackson was in the hospital. He became an organ donor, which often requires a couple of extra days.
Can you describe for the jury his injuries.
Jackson had bruising around both of his eyes. He had a large bruise to the left side of his forehead. He had undergone a craniectomy where the neurosurgeon removes a portion of the skull to relieve pressure on the brain from brain swelling. He also had a separation of his skull from his cervical spine.
What was his cause of death?
Complications of craniocerebral injuries due to blunt force trauma to head.
And would that be consistent with it being struck by a moving SUV weighing approximately 3,300 pounds?
Yes.
Objection, hearsay.
He still objects. Shut up.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
Yeah, I cannot stand that. This is serious, you know? This is him confronting what he did and how he did it and how he provoked these injuries to them, and he's just objecting to, I don't know, waste time.
Cross-exam.
1 second.
Here we go with the acting. He's just doing whatever just to seem to the jury that he's sad. He's not sad. He doesn't care. 3 hours later. Alright, he's done, I think. Nope, still doing whatever. Say something, my guy. Judge. Please. Come on. See? No tears. Dry eyes. He's just looking down to see if he can cry, and he can't even do that. Thank you, Judge.
Your cross, please. Do you have any questions for this witness?
Just 1 second.
Did you been having like 20 minutes?
I apologize to the court.
Okay, he took all that time, like 10 minutes, or I don't know, whatever time he had. And now let's see what important, relevant question he has after all that.
So long. Do you know why the decision was made to why the decision was made
Yeah.
for Jackson to become an organ donor?
There you go. He took 20 minutes. He took all the time in the world to formulate a question. And the first thing that he asked is why he became an organ donor. How is that relevant? Why does that matter to you? Why does that matter to the case? He became an organ donor because you hit him with your car. That's why. Monster.
That's irrelevant.
Sustained.
Any
Did you,
follow-up? Oh. No follow-up.
Did you end up doing any more autopsies besides those 3?
Cares.
As it relates to this case or some other case, sir?
As far as this case, those are the only 3 autopsies that you did.
Yes.
Yes, Jackson Sparks, Virginia Sorensen, and Lyanna Owen.
If you don't have anything to say, just move on, my guy. You don't need to ask any questions.
Or you called to attend to any other victims of the incident? Or just the 3?
She just answered that. What?
Jackson Sparks, Virginia Sorensen, and Lyanna Owen.
You didn't tend to anyone else?
He asked for your question.
Grounds.
And he asked for grounds.
Overruled. She may
You
answer.
literally just, why are you letting me ask?
No.
No further questions.
Thank you,
Thank you. Any redirect? All
monster.
No matter.
right. Thank you, Dr. Shield. You may step down.
Your
Say my
Honor,
call. Sorry.
Your Honor, if it pleases the court, may I have a few moments?
We can take a short break. I'll excuse the jury. We all can take about a 10-minute break. All rise for the jury, please.
All this acting and no tears. Not a single tear forming in his eyes. He's just sad because he needs to act for the jury.
Right, it's 2:13. We'll be in recess for 10 minutes. We'll be back at 2:23. Thank you.
We'll briefly touch on the subject matter jurisdiction again.
And then he comes back with his nonsense about subject matter jurisdiction, okay? He's sad, but he still has to push this in for whatever reason.
For the
The
record,
court will not be addressing that. Please bring out the jury.
When did you perform the autopsy on Mr. Rand?
On November 23rd.
And were you aware that this was as a result of an incident that occurred in downtown Waukesha on November 21st, 2021?
Absolutely.
Overruled. Her answer may stand.
I'm going to give you a pointer. I think it's hard maybe for the jury. I'm having a hard time seeing some of the dots
Okay.
on the skeletal knife.
Objection. Relevancy is
Overruled.
grounds for the overrule.
What do you mean relevancy? It's an exhibit. It's evidence.
Relevant.
Did you see the suspect vehicle, or did you go to look at the suspect vehicle in this case?
Yes, I did.
Leading the witness.
Overruled. She may answer. Go ahead.
I did. She died of multiple blunt trauma, but each area of injury was quite severe in and of itself.
Would that be consistent with her being struck by a moving SUV weighing in excess of 3,300 pounds?
Absolutely.
Hearsay.
It's not hearsay.
It's
an expert.
overruled.
Did you perform an autopsy on Jane Kulik?
I did. The chest injuries, the pelvic injuries, and the abdominal injuries, each were very serious and could have been fatal individually.
And is that consistent with Ms. Kulik being struck by a moving SUV weighing in excess of 3,300 pounds?
Yes.
Objection. Hearsay.
Did you determine the cause of death to be for Mr. Haspel?
Multiple blunt force trauma.
And the fatal injuries for Mr. Haspel, can you describe those for the jury?
And I just want to point out that this case was so severe that they had to use two experts for the autopsies. Two.
Answer.
Overruled. She may answer.
An injury to the thoracic duct, which carries your lymph fluid, and as a result of that injury, he also had an accumulation of fluid in both chest cavities of the lymph fluid.
And would those fatal injuries and the injuries that you've described, would those be consistent with being struck by a moving SUV weighing in excess of 3,300 pounds?
Objection. Leading the witness.
Overruled. You may answer.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right.
Your
let's see Mr.
primary
Smart Guy.
field is in the medical field. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
Yes. So what?
Any reason why you would be inspecting a car if that's not a medical professional thing?
What? Why do you need to? He's saying that she's not a mechanic and she is not qualified to review a car? That's not how it works. She needs to see if what hit the person is the same thing that was used.
The examination of anything that's related to injuries in the people that I later examine is relevant in my specialty of forensic pathology.
Examining the vehicle would be essential to your medical expertise. Is that fair to say?
Essential.
Examining the vehicle is important to interpret the injuries. I'm not sure that I don't know if that's the answer to your
Yeah, a good example of this is if you write something, she can expect the pen to see if it matches the ink. It's fairly easy to understand.
question.
If you were doing an injury assessment based on if the injury was caused by a different kind of instrument, would the same apply to having to view that?
Relevance.
Yes, if in cases of gunshot wounds, I ask to see the gun. In cases of stabbings or blunt trauma, I ask to see the weapons that they think were used, so I can determine if they are consistent or not consistent.
In the case of a gunshot wound, as you brought up,
She didn't say gun. This is another premium time where Darrell misinterprets what they say. She didn't say a gunshot wound. She said a gun wound. That means if you get like hit with the gun. And now he's saying the gunshot, and he's gonna go in a ramble about like why would you need to pick the gun if the bullet was what caused the injury?
it wouldn't be.
It's nonsense.
It would. Let me back up. It would. Would you say it would be hard to assess the gun, being that it wouldn't be the actual gun, but the bullets that caused the injury?
See,
Well, actually, I don't examine the bullets, but I would examine the gun, especially, for example, if it's a contact wound. So if the muzzle of the gun touches the skin, then the muzzle could leave a mark. So then I could say the muzzle of the gun shown to me might match the mark.
And
there you go.
if it was something similar to that, the muzzle type thing, that would be, the mark would be from the heat. Would that be fair to say?
No.
No, not actually. It's actually from the contact of the metal. So it's more of an abrasion than a burn.
So in a case like in a case like that, what would be the significance of the actual inspection of the gun?
I'm going to object to this question. I think it's a little bit of field of where we're at.
Grounds.
Overruled. She may answer. She brought it up as an example. I'll allow a little bit of leeway, but go ahead.
Too much leeway.
Could you repeat your question?
What would be the significance of inspecting the actual gun in terms of the injury?
Well, I may be able to say that the mark on the skin, for example, is consistent with the outline of the muzzle of that particular weapon, looking at the dimensions and shape.
So what if it was used from a distance? Then what would be the essential reason to inspect the gun?
Depending on the distance, sometimes the pattern of stippling, like for example, if there's a flash suppression or something used, that can play a role. If it's very far away, then the actual characteristics of the weapon are more general. So it depends on, distance does play a role on what I would be evaluating.
And what are those questions for?
Do you know if at the time you did the autopsies, if any of the victims you performed the autopsy on had any underlining?
Okay, so he asked all of those questions for nothing. There was no end goal to that.
Illnesses at that time, any cancers or anything like that may have been going on at the time that you did the autopsy?
Yes, I would make observations of any natural disease processes that I saw at the time of autopsy.
Did you observe any?
Yes.
Do you recall from who that was?
Well, Mr. Hospital, he was an older gentleman. He had some heart disease, as I recall, a pacemaker, some coronary artery disease. Ms. Kulik, as I recall, had a large fibroid. That's what I remember.
Can you explain to the jury what is a large thyroid?
Can you explain to the jury? It's the code for, can you explain to me? Because I don't know.
Is that the word you, thyroid?
Fibroid.
I'm sorry.
Yes. It's
Fibroid.
a benign uterine tumor.
Is that a form of cancer?
No.
It's not.
The older gentleman had some fluid buildup in the chest. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to misquote you. Some type of fluid around the chest area.
Why are you
Correct.
bringing that up?
And from your recollection, that wasn't caused by the vehicle?
That was. He entered the hospital actually with no evidence of that fluid
He
because
still incriminates himself.
of the blood loss, the fluid collected in the hospital.
It would be fair to say that that came about once he was already at the hospital.
That's
Yes,
true.
because you hit him. That's how the fluid came up.
And you said he had a pacemaker. Would that have any effect whatsoever on what might have been going on in his chest at the time?
No, and because he was in the hospital, the function of that pacemaker was well documented while he was being monitored.
Was it pretty active, still working properly at that time?
It was.
And I guess what he's trying to do with all these questions is to establish that, oh, maybe it wasn't me hitting them that killed them. Maybe it was the pacemaker that failed, and that was the thing that killed him. But that doesn't work like that.
Even with the loss of blood, as you say, he had a loss of blood. Even then, was it still working pretty good?
Yes, the loss of blood had no effect on the electrical function of the pacemaker.
You made a brief observation about speed and velocity. Do you have any expertise in that area?
Only to the extent that I understand how injuries occur and in terms of the transfer of kinetic energy, because all injuries I see in the body have to do with that kind of transfer.
Would it be fair to say that everybody is different, though?
Everybody is different.
Oh,
So with May, I guess I would phrase the question by saying something that may seriously injure someone else probably wouldn't seriously injure another person.
what?
Based on
This is not a punch. This is a car running you over. Most people will
your expertise.
suffer big injuries out of that.
Generally, things of a serious nature don't become not serious. I would say that different people might have this, there are differences in people and how injuries how different events might injure them. But I wouldn't say that something that's serious in one individual would be minimal in another.
Yeah.
Even though there might be a range, it's not going to be okay for one person, but maybe deadly for another. That is not typically how it is.
But it can vary.
It can vary.
Do you recall how many people you were called to attend to the night of the incident?
How many people I was called to attend to?
Yes.
There were 3 victims on the road. Those are the ones that I saw that night.
Did you see anyone else besides those 3?
I later saw Ms. Kulik, who came from the hospital. Those were the people I examined that evening.
So it was just the 3.
The 4.
She just said 4.
Do you recall being notified possibly to testify in
Here
this
we
matter?
go with this thing.
Yes. I knew always that this case would end up in trial.
How would you know exactly that the case would end up in trial?
She guessed.
And I say that because many factors could play out along, many different things happen over time.
You're right. That was probably a misstatement on my part. I thought it might go to trial, given the nature of the case, but I did not know for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Definitely.
Okay.
Do you recall whom you were subpoenaed by?
The district attorney.
Plenty
Would
of
that be
question
referring
time.
to one of the district attorneys here today?
Sue Opper.
Did Attorney Opper ever state that she was the plaintiff in this matter?
Objection
Grounds,
Sustained. You do not have to answer that question.
And none of the
grounds for the
following.
sustain, Your Honor.
You may ask your next question.
Were you ever made aware of the plaintiff in this matter?
Objection
Grounds.
Move on. It doesn't matter.
Sustained. You do not have to answer that. Please ask your next question.
Grounds for the sustain, Your Honor, before I continue.
Ask your next question.
Do you even know if there's a plaintiff in this matter?
Objection relevant.
Grounds?
Sustained.
Reason for the sustain, Your Honor?
It's
Ask
not
your next
relevant.
question.
It doesn't matter. Just
No
move
reason for the
on.
sustain, Your Honor?
Ask your next question.
That look. No reason for the sustain? Really?
Do you know of any claims filed in this matter by you or anyone else?
What are claims?
Good
Any
answer.
reports filed? Any
Make him work. He asked this question so
Any
many
fouls,
times. He's asked this question like 10 times at this point, and he doesn't know what a claim is. He kind of just, you know what, a claim is this.
on your behalf or anyone you know?
She's
I'm
like,
actually
what?
not sure I understand that.
I would object to it. It's vague.
Grounds.
Sustained.
Did you make any claim of being an injured party in this matter?
Look at his dead eyes, just watching her. He's like, the guy behind him has more life in his face than this person.
No.
Do you know of anybody that has
Objection relevance.
grounds?
Doesn't matter.
Sustained.
Reason for the sustain, Your Honor?
It's sustained. Move on.
Relevance.
Why don't you tell him?
Vague.
If you start telling him
Yeah,
once, he's gonna
any,
want it every time.
Any opportunity to view a complaint in this matter?
Objection vague.
Grounds.
Sustained as to the form.
Have you ever seen a complaint in this matter?
Objection vague.
Grounds.
It doesn't matter.
Sustained as to the form.
Have you ever at any time had any interaction with the plaintiff in this matter?
Objection.
Grounds.
Sustained.
Reason for the sustain, Your Honor?
It's sustained.
Vague.
Move on.
Relevance.
I would object to that sustain.
You can object to
Saying vague
rulings.
and relevant to the
Sustained.
case.
Next question.
Who
sir.
told him that he can object to
It's relevant,
rulings?
Your Honor.
Your
Jury
objection
deserves
is
to
noted.
know.
It's overruled.
And the jury deserves to know.
I respect that.
Okay.
Jury deserves to know, though.
If you respect that, move
Disregard the
on.
last statement made by Mr. Brooks. It's not his time to testify. Comments made by the parties or attorneys are not evidence.
Look at this head bobble that he does. Are you done?
Have you ever seen the plaintiff in this matter?
Objection
Every
relevance.
Just tell him to move
Sustained.
on. Reason for the sustain.
Your Honor?
Same as before.
So that would be relevancy and vagueness.
You know what it was.
Ask your next
Move on.
question.
Was today your first time ever seeing those exhibits that were shown?
Dumb
No.
question.
You seen those before, those videos?
Videos?
Yeah, the exhibits that were shown. The
Videos.
Diagrams?
Yes. I'm sorry, I didn't know that's how you identified them.
Oh. Well,
How,
I drew
why
them.
would she identify them as videos?
Oh, those exact ones?
Yes.
Oh, so okay, okay.
She made them. Congrats.
I wasn't aware of that. I apologize for that question.
And all of the questions before you should
And
apologize
so I'm
as well.
assuming at some point you turned those over to the district attorney. Would that be fair to say?
Today.
Oh, today. Any reason why you didn't previously turn those over before you actually were called to test, or before you knew that you would be testifying today?
I decided to prepare them for the purpose of testimony. They didn't exist before today.
There you go.
That's interesting.
It is. What? Why?
So this was really like a 11th hour bottom of the night thing for you to get them prepared and be ready to go today then. Would that be
No.
fair to say?
No, I wouldn't say that.
To your knowledge, what would be the reason why you weren't already asked to develop those
How would she know?
diagrams?
Speculation.
Meaning, why weren't you asked this months ago in advance?
I don't think that anybody thinks about what exhibits might be used in a trial until the trial approaches, would be my answer.
Had you ever created any diagrams like that before? The way that you did these, had you ever done this before this incident?
I've used diagrams in many, many trials. I just didn't have a diagram that displayed the body and the skeleton in this manner. I had no pre-existing form, but I use diagrams all the time.
Yeah.
So for this particular case, you decided to go a little bit extra. Would that be fair to say?
What are you
Grounds.
saying?
Sustained.
You just
As
made
to
a
the following
diagram.
question.
Would it be fair to say then that for this particular case, you decided that you would want a diagram that was a little bit more defined?
No.
What I decided was we had 3 decedents, and I thought it would be easiest for the jury to understand the complexity of the injuries when talking about 3 people sequentially if I could compress the information. It would be multiple pages, and I thought that would be very difficult when we're talking about 3 different people.
Yeah.
So had you thought of that before in any other cases that you've done before this one?
I don't remember testifying about 3 pedestrians in trial in one sitting ever before.
No. I
He's
wasn't
still
asking.
hurting his defense. He's like, she's like, I never been in a case so heinous like this.
If you've testified at a trial before, I was asking, based on the explanation that you just gave about making it easier to read the diagrams, had you ever thought of that before this particular case?
Yes, it's not unusual for me to create my own diagrams specific to a case.
There you go.
What I meant by that question was the way that you designed these particular diagrams. Had you thought of doing it this way before this particular incident?
Objections to relevance.
Grounds.
Sustained.
Doesn't matter for this case.
Grounds for the sustained, Your Honor.
Next question, please.
Ma'am, to follow up on these diagrams that have been presented in court today, are all the findings that are contained in those diagrams from the autopsy protocol?
Yes,
Objection.
Overruled.
Relevancy.
Overruled.
And ma'am, could you have brought in it's Halloween, so we see them all over the place, but could you have brought in a skeleton and described the same injuries?
Objection. Relevancy.
Overruled. It's
Objection.
You
redirect.
ask about the
She may,
diagrams.
it's not hearsay. She may answer.
I could show you the broken bones on the skeleton.
And if you had in a doll or a mannequin, that would be something that you could show the jury, just like you did in these diagrams, where the injuries, the external injuries were. Would that be a correct
Objection.
statement?
Relevancy.
It's relevant.
Overruled. You may answer.
That's true.
So is there anything on these diagrams that were not contained within the autopsy protocol that were turned over to the state months ago?
Objection. Relevancy.
Overruled.
No, there's nothing on the diagrams that was not, that isn't listed in the autopsy reports.
Yeah, it's
If I
just a
put a
representation
blank
of the
diagram in
report.
front of you, could you have made these same markings right here? And it would have just taken time, obviously, but could you have done it right now?
Objection. Lead the witness.
not
Overruled. You may answer.
Yes, I could.
Thank you. Now, I want to talk briefly about Jane Kulik's autopsy. You had stated that you had discovered a benign uterine fibroid. Is that correct?
Correct.
Did that in any way, was that a factor in her death?
Objection. Hearsay.
That-
Overruled.
She's an
She may
expert. It's not hearsay.
answer.
No,
And with regard to Wilhelm Hasbo, was the presence of a pacemaker in any way related to his death?
Objection. I asked that in my cross and she answered.
Overruled. It's redirect. It's proper. The state may ask it. You may answer.
no,
Because he asked it, then she can ask it.
Coronary disease that you testified to on cross-examination, did that play a factor in his death?
Objection. Same reason.
Overruled.
Already
You may
answered.
answer.
No.
The thoracic fluid found in Mr. Hospital's lungs that you said did play a factor in his death. Is that correct?
Yes.
What caused that fluid buildup around his lungs?
Objection answered already.
Overruled. You may answer.
It was an injury to the thoracic duct that was caused by the impact of the vehicle to his body.
Nothing further, thank you.
All right, thank you. You may step down.
All right, and we're gonna leave it until that point for today. Thank you so much for watching. This was horrible. He did worse to himself, and he could have just not say anything. That's the thing. You don't have to do cross-examination. You don't have to, and he decides to do it for some reason. It would be better for him to just not say anything than to do the cross. But all right, see you guys in the next episode. Give it a like if you made it this far. I'll see you guys next time.